Hello and welcome back to another episode for Project Seed Money. My name is Sharissa Bradley and I am interviewing Jamie today, an author and a dear friend. And I am so excited that you are here. Thank you so much for joining us, Jamie. And thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. After seeing some of the interviews you've done and the fantastic women that you've worked with, I feel so honored to be here and to be sharing this experience and sharing just whatever knowledge I come up with today for the world.
Thank you. That is so incredible. I feel like you are just right in line with all of these other women that I've been talking to. We all have such a unique story. And it really comes down to the fact that you've all been brave enough to go through this process of publishing and authoring a book and having it out in the world. And the fact that you all have faced very similar vulnerabilities, very similar fears when it comes to this process, it makes it so that it feels like my audience is getting a tremendous amount of value from every single woman who has been up here. And you are definitely no exception to that rule. So thank you. But I do want to go ahead and get us started by asking, is writing something that you have always done, or is that something that you came to later in life?
Always. I was born a writer. I always had a journal in hand. In the day and age that I grew up with, there were no phones. And so I would basically hop on my bike, tell my mom I'm off, pack myself something to eat with my journal in hand, several books. And she would just say, be home for dinner. So as long as I can remember, I wrote. And I always considered myself a writer. My parents were both teachers. I practiced being a teacher. I made all the neighborhood kids come over so that I could tell them exactly what they needed to know about anything. I'm really good at making things up and flying by the seat of my pants and pretending I'm the expert. So I was able to create quite a world for myself. And I used to do a lot of fiction and poetry. And it's crazy that my first book was nonfiction because it was mostly like creative writing that I did. So it was very interesting that my first actual book that I published was nonfiction.
That's so interesting. Do you
Yeah.
think you'll ever go back to writing fiction? Do you think you'll ever publish books in that genre?
Absolutely. I think that that is going to be a goal of mine because that's what I love to read. I can tell you that I have a whole bookshelf full of nonfiction books that I have not read because I'm fully motivated to purchase them. I'm motivated by the people who write them and I don't read them. Fiction is kind of my escape as a mom. I get in the car, I do a lot of audible books and just get in the car and I lose myself in those books. So definitely I would love to join those authors in the fiction world someday.
That's incredible. So you started out with actually writing nonfiction. Did you ever lean on your journals or your writing to kind of validate your book that you wrote that you actually have published already? Like, did you ever lean back on some of these things that you had written up to that point to write your book that you did end up publishing so far?
No, no, it was a completely new experience for me. Honestly, I had a message and it was a mess and I just had to tell it. I didn't set out to write a book. Really, I didn't. I set out to just survive grief and figure out how to turn that pain into a purpose. And somewhere along the way, I realized that when we tell hard stories, we give others permission to rise from their own. And I think I have a background, like I said, of teaching. I have a psychology degree and I just have a desire to help people. And I thought, wow, I think I can help people out with this message that I'm about to write.
That's incredible. Did you face any fear when you were getting up to the publishing process or like when it was coming up, like, oh, this is a book? Was that something that came up, a little bit of fear around publishing, around sharing?
Oh, heck yeah. This was a hard book. It involved a lot of hearts. It was a very close to home, very dealing with suicide is a tricky subject. And then wondering how the impact of my book was going to affect people on so many levels. I was really scared to publish it, especially because of my mom. So, yeah, this was a hard one. I mean, I think any kind of memoir, it's like a non-fictional memoir. I don't even know what to call it. There's a lot of real stories in there, but it's really meant to be a nonfiction. But there's a lot of raw stuff in there, a lot of emotion, and I was worried how it was gonna be received, but I'm one of those people that I kinda don't care what people think, and so I pushed that publish button and I closed my eyes and I said, "Let's go."
What was it that gave you that final bit of courage? You mentioned before, like you had this story and it needed to come out and you knew that it was going to help other people. But what gave you that ability to push publish?
To be honest with you, my brother.
Yeah.
My brother, and I talk about this in my book, but he had nonfiction books everywhere, all over the house, in my mom's house where he had been living at the time, and they were everywhere. And I started boxing them up and I started reading them. And it really just made me realize that this is the story that he would have wanted to read. So it's a story I had to tell, even if it was just for him. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, I didn't know what was gonna come of it. I didn't do it to make money, and I definitely did it to help people, but for more than anything, I did it to just honor my brother.
That's incredible. So it sounds like because it was such a vulnerable subject, it does sound like you faced a lot of vulnerability after it was published as well. Were you worried about the backlash and things that would maybe come from it? Or once you publish, was that kind of, it's in the world, I'm done?
Definitely, I just have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I'm no expert in this. I'm just a sister who did research and cared about her brother, and I care about other people who possibly struggled in the same way, and I care about saving somebody, even if it's just one person. So, I feel like I had this courage to do it, and I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. I
It's
don't know.
okay. It sounds like it was one of those things that just had to be. It had to be
Yeah,
in the world. And
yeah.
regardless of your fear, it was going to move forward. And it does sound like your brother was comforting you, spiritually in that way of like, this is something that needs to be in the world, especially for people who like, I also have a shelf full of nonfiction books and I so much prefer my like little indie romance, enemies
Mhm.
to lovers, cowboys, over learning at this point in my life, like you said before, like being a mother, it's
Mhm.
such a nice thing to be able to kind of jump into a world where no one is asking you for anything.
Mhm. Yeah,
I think
for
that
sure.
now that you've faced this kind of like, it feels kind of like a big, huge boulder, like the biggest kind of thing that you could write and the most vulnerable thing that you could write. And then, like you said, like involving multiple parts in your family, like your mother and these other people that were directly affected.
Mhm.
But now maybe moving into like the fiction space, do you think that this will kind of get tied into some of the stories you write? Do you think that it will inspire you to write stories that are maybe different types of outcomes that are fictional, but maybe are still a little bit inspired by what you've written in the past?
Yeah, definitely. I'm working on a nonfiction right now, but I'm also working on it's almost like a fictional memoir of my dad's life as well, because my dad lived a really painful childhood. I've interviewed many of his siblings and I've put together some really fun stuff where I had to really ad lib, so to speak. I got some information from them, but there's a lot of holes that I have to fill in. So it's almost like I think I'm weaving it into a fictional piece where definitely names are going to be changed. But those in my family who read it, they're going to know there's definitely going to be a storyline there that they're familiar with. But I've started writing that right after my dad passed. But then my brother passed a couple years later. His took the platform there. And I just decided that needed to be done first. But I'm always dabbling with fiction. For me, it feels more comfortable to write nonfiction. It's almost like I can hide behind my emotions a little bit because I've got the facts, right? And I just think as far as fiction goes, you're really like laying it all out there and it's your creativity and either people love it or they don't. So that feels a little bit more vulnerable to me, to be honest with you.
That's so interesting. In my head, I was thinking like, oh, this is totally the other way around. Like you've already done this hard thing. These are going to be so much simpler for you to be able to face. But no, it sounds like it's going to be another bit of a challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you also offer, now that you've learned the working world of the publishing side of things, you've also learned so much along the way. And now I know that you are offering your services back to other authors who are kind of in that same like beginner boat that you are. So through Project Seed Money, we have you on our directory, offering these services to people. Do you maybe want to touch on how you can support other authors who are getting their feet wet in the publishing world?
Definitely. So the coaching program that I've come up with is called Pages to Platform, because I think a lot of authors, when they're writing, they're hiding behind those pages, and it's really easy for us creatives to get it all on paper, but it's harder to talk about it, like actually verbalize those feelings. And so the program I'm creating is to help authors find their voice in a verbal way. So to take it pages to platform. And honestly, I feel like authors who talk about their book, their experience, their characters, if it's fiction, their background knowledge, their research, if it's nonfiction, those are the writers that readers want to read about. You know, they want to know where all that information came from. They want to put a face to all that information, and they really want to connect on that level. So I really want to make it known to authors how important it is to not only write their book, but talk about their book and to build a platform for their book and not necessarily go on stage. I will meet with people on an individual basis and find out where they stand, where they're comfortable with. But I really think that everyone has the capability to be a speaker because you're a writer. You already have that knowledge and you just need to find your voice.
That's such a valuable resource because so much of what we offer, so much of what the publishing professionals offer is all the way up to publication. And then it kind of gets dropped. And I know for
Mhm.
myself, like when I published my first book 10 years ago, I never did a thing with it. It was like, okay, it's out in the world. Like now I'm going to hide and just like pretend like no one is reading my story right now. But then I learned like the more I share about it, the more people are going to be able to read it and the more people I'm going to be able to help. So that was something I personally struggled with and still struggle with because it's hard to talk about
Yeah.
yourself and brag about yourself. So if you can have somewhere to go and someone to support you in that, I feel like that's a hugely valuable resource. Thank you.
Mhm. Yes.
That's incredible. Well, I think that I would love to ask you our last question, which is just, do you have any advice or any inspiration for the audience that's listening to our channel? They are female authors who are just on the fence about how do I get this? Do I do this? What do I do? Does anybody even want to hear my story? Does it matter? What do you have to say to them?
Well, I actually write about procrastination in my book because it's
Mhm.
something I feel like I'm an expert on it because I pressed that publish button back a couple of years ago and immediately started doing other things.
Yeah.
I got certified in life insurance and I have my bookkeeping pro advisor certification. And I'm an ad manager and I'm an AI marketer. And I just have all of these things that I started doing and just kind of procrastinating. So I would just say that if you're feeling stuck, if you feel like you have writer's block, if you put a word to it, it's really just procrastination. You can't let this excuse give you permission to tell yourself that you're not a writer.
Yeah.
Feeling stuck is just feeling human, right? It means you're human and you're trying to do something brave. So fear is what really is holding us back. And so if you can just hold on to the fact that writing and finishing a book, publishing a book is being brave and overcoming that fear. And that's just a very human emotion. You've been given a story, right? As a writer, especially it could be a really hard one and it's not by accident. You're meant to carry it forward and not bury yourself in that self-doubt. Your future readers are already looking for the words that you're afraid to write. Honestly, and you're not doing anyone a service by holding those inside. And so I would say there's really four questions that a writer could ask themselves. And number one is, are you afraid it won't be perfect? Are you worried no one will read it? Are you unclear about your message? And are you waiting for more time, more energy, more clarity, more permission? Because let me just say that I'm giving you permission right now. I'm giving you permission to write your book because you have a story. 9 times out of 10, you're stuck, not because of lack of talent, right? Because you're scared. So if that story still hurts to tell, that just means it still matters. And I promise it's going to grow into something beautiful for you. So if you think you have to be unbreakable to be successful, you're listening to the wrong voice in your head.
That's so beautiful, Jamie. Thank you so much. That I'm gonna have to like sit with that. That's absolutely so beautiful. I love your questions. When we ask our brain questions, it strives to give us the answer. So you don't even have to know the answer to ask your brain the question. That's so beautiful. And I just want to ask, where can we find your book? Please tell us the title. And where can we find you to connect further?
The book is on Goodreads. It's also on Amazon. It's called From VIP to RIP, A Sister's Search for Answers Through a Misunderstood Brain. Looks like this. It's hard to say. There. Okay, there it is. And you can get more information on my program by just going to my website at pagestoplatform.com. I also have an author site. Just so you know, I go by JK Enfield when I write. My name is Jamie, but I also have a published by jkenfield.com site that has some, books that I recommend. It has a little bit about me. It's more personal than my pages to platform.com site. So
Thank you so much. And I'll make sure to have all those links easily accessible in the description box below. I
mhm.
really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom. You are adding so much value to this platform, and I really appreciate it.
Or
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode for Project Seed Money. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And I will see you with another interview next week.